Hi, I'm John Sauvé, and this is Art and Design. Today, my guest is Susan Fitzmaurice and Teddy Fitzmaurice. How are you guys doing today?
Excellent. Thank you for having us.
Hey, Ted. So, Susan, can you give us the background on the ADA bill that came out close to 30 years ago? What's the history of that?
Well, for a very long time, people with disabilities were seeking rights, and we got some rights, but they weren't as pervasive as what we really needed. So there's like the Rehabilitation Act, there's a number of acts that were instrumental in getting people some rights, but not civil rights. And that's the main difference with the ADA, is it's civil rights legislation. And it's not just doing nice things for people, it is actually providing people with rights to have equity in society. One act relates to employment only. One act relates to public spaces, one commercial spaces. And then there's one, which is my favorite one, that is about transportation and whistleblowers. It was very difficult to get people on board initially, but then under George W. Bush, it was actually passed unanimously.
Everybody has a different impression of what accessibility is. Now, can you give some examples of what the ADA has done?
The things that I think most people think of before they think of anything else is curb cuts, because that's one of those things that we all encounter and actually appreciate, even if we don't theoretically need them. And so the curb cuts, what people don't necessarily realize is they have to be a certain width, and the gradient has to be a certain amount. And when it's all crumbly and everything, that's not compliant. So it has to be kept in a good condition. And then people who are in wheelchairs can roll over it. People who are blind can go over it, and it's not going to have their cane tips stuck in it. People with baby carriages can go over it. People who are using walkers can use it. So it's, you think of it maybe it's just for people with wheelchairs, but it's actually for far more than that. There are people who can now go to things like theaters and can hear it, because in theory, at least, any theatrical production that is presenting with sound is supposed to have assistive listening devices available. If you go to court, now there has to be assisted listening devices available. Imagine getting a ticket and having to go to court and you can't hear anything because you can't hear and nothing is amplified. And so they're going to make decisions about you, but you can't hear what they're saying. So now websites have to be accessible. Federal websites all have to be accessible. If you have a store like Target and you want to have an online presence, it has to be accessible. That was not addressed in the initial ADA at all. And our TVs now, all, in the beginning it was only some TVs, now all new TVs have to have the closed captioning device in them.
The ADA bill, which we'll be celebrating in 2020, is 30 years old.
Yes.
And the closed captioning is a direct result,
yes,
of that ADA bill. Because
Absolutely.
you have to raise the awareness, you have to set some type of standard so that all people have accessibility. And I love how you highlight too, it's people in chairs like yourself, it's people with baby strollers that affects everyone, every family. It's the elderly, because eventually you're going to be using a walker. And there's different versions of that, but that's the accessibility portion. So eventually everybody is going to be affected, if you're not already, in some way with the ADA bill that's set these standards for people to have access.
It isn't prescriptive in that things have to be exactly this way, because it's understood that there are historical buildings, there are buildings that have special purposes, so there are leniencies that are built in when circumstances require you look at a situation differently and still look at ADA compliance, and how can you best affect that without marring the historical. I mean, if you had gone back, 75 years, I could not have had a life, period. There would have been zero opportunities for me at all. You go back 35 years, he would have had no opportunities at all. So part of what's changed is the whole landscape of disability, because access is now available to us. We have access to our schools. And it started off with elementary schools. Now it's colleges that are accessible. Now it's business places that are accessible. When Teddy started school in kindergarten, he was the first included kid in the state. So he started regular kindergarten. And what I dreamed then, and I see happening now, is that the children that he went to school with are now the people who hire people. And they're changed. So it's not just about making it accessible when they're children, it's about growing up in an environment where people with disabilities are included, and they don't see them as outsiders, second-class citizens. They're one of us. And so when they go forward in life and they're in positions of power, then they're not excluding people with disabilities, because they see people with disabilities have been part of their lives, and why suddenly now aren't they? You know, and so they are now the people who can say, this isn't right. You know, what do we do? You know, so the people who were the initial recipients, really, of the benefits of accessibility, not just the people with disabilities, but the people who were their peers, they're now the forefront of making it work.
I have Teddy here. Ted, I'm glad you're here because you have the shirt that celebrates the 25th anniversary. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate you. So, celebrating the shirt, what happened on that date when you did the 25th anniversary in 2015?
We had an event at Eastern Market. Over 2,000 people attended, which was wonderful. We had lots of different things going on. We had art. We had art that was representative, like Tom Olin's photographs, but we also had someone like Dwayne Zotz, who is an artist who has adaptive tools, so people who are using wheelchairs can put tools on their wheelchairs and roll around the floor and paint. We had people who were professional wheelchair dancers do a class in wheelchair dance. The person who did that was in part Cheryl Angeletti, who is with the Detroit Medical Center and is a Paralympian. We had the Wild Swan Theater, which is out of Ann Arbor, do a play that was verbal and in American Sign Language. We had musicians who were blind. We had one musician who was deaf. Just a gambit of everything imaginable. And people came expecting to come for a short period of time. That's what I heard over and over again. They were going to come and kind of drop in, but they came and they stayed until it was over. T-shirt was designed on a national basis, but we had things happening all over the country. And so 8 hours of absolutely amazing stuff was going on. I actually wish I wasn't organizing it, so I could have actually
to enjoy it after all that hard work you put into it. Absolutely.
Well, so the plan for 30 is that there's going to be lots of events around the state.
What you're saying, that if people come next July, is it the 27th? What's the date of the event?
28th. July 28th.
So it's Tuesday, July 28th.
Yes.
At Eastern Market in Detroit. It's going to be an all-day event. There'll be other events attached to it, but that's our main event that we're talking about for the 30th anniversary of the ADA.
Yes.
Susan, I'm so glad you came today. I'm looking forward to the event. We're going to touch base as we get closer to.
Okay.
Ted, thanks for coming. I'm glad you put the shirt on because you are my poster guy today. You're my billboard that says it happened on the 25th anniversary. It's going to happen on the 30th. And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.